We're now going to get started knitting the Vikkel braid or Estonian lateral braid English throwing style in the round with a somewhat jogless join. If you've done this braid before following how to do it flat in one of my other tutorial videos, this will be very familiar apart from the very last bit at the end to join. If you're new to this braid, you will have a lot of fun. It follows a very simple 2-stitch repeat, so easy to get a hold of. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna start off our stitch repeat. So I'm just gonna tilt this up so you have a good view. We're gonna insert I'm gonna just tilt this up so you have a nice view. So what we're gonna do is take our right hand needle and insert it into the second stitch on the left hand needle through the back loop to knit through the back loop. So I'm just gonna insert it back here, wrap my yarn around, pull my yarn through like so. So I have one stitch on my right hand needle from that knit through the back loop of the second stitch on my left hand needle. Now I'm going to go through the first stitch on the left needle. As if to knit, we're just going to do a regular knit stitch, nothing fancy, like so. So I've worked the first 2 stitches on my left needle, and now I have 2 stitches on my right needle. Once the first 2 stitches on the left hand needle have been worked, you can slide them off. And what you'll notice on your right hand needle is those stitches are crossing over. So a knit twist, a Vikkel knitted twisted stitch. So that is a left leaning one. Now the important step to finish off this 2-stitch repeat is that we're going to slide what is the first stitch on our right hand needle back to the left needle. So just slide it across purlwise like so. And then we're going to repeat that whole process again. So from here on out, all of our stitches that we are going to be knitting are going to be knitted twice. So let's do that again. So we're going to insert our right hand needle through the second stitch through the back loop, wrap our yarn around to knit through the back loop and pull that yarn through. Then we're going to knit the first stitch, just a normal knit stitch. Once we've worked both of those stitches on the left needle, slide them off, and then we're going to slide the first stitch on the right hand needle purlwise back to the left needle and do that all over again, all the way to the end of the round. So knit through the back loop of the second stitch on the left needle, knit the first stitch, normal knit stitch, slide both off, and then slide the first stitch on the right needle purlwise back to the left hand needle. And what you should start to see happening on your right hand needle is that your stitches look like they're going horizontal. And you'll notice that once you've done at least 2 repeats of that kind of repeat section. So we're just doing that 2-stitch repeat all the way to the end of the round, and then we'll do our jogless joins. So knitting through the back loop of the second stitch on the left needle, knit the first stitch on the left needle, slide the 2 stitches off the left needle, and then pass the first stitch on the right needle purlwise back to the left. And keep going until you get to the end of the round. You'll notice as you are working this beautiful braid that the tension of your stitches on the finished kind of end will be looser than your stitch tension of below the braid. So I've got some stockinette here. So you'll notice my loops of stitches up here are a little bit longer and looser. What you want to do when you're knitting this braid is you want to pull your yarn quite tight, like over here, just pulled on that. You want to keep your tension quite tight to minimize that. If that's a little bit stressful on your hands, which I absolutely get, as this braid is done in just one round of knitting, what you can do is just for this specific round for the braid is work it on a needle size, one size, maybe even two sizes smaller. That will help with your tension. If you are working on double pointed needles like I am, you will find that you will probably finish one needle, if you've evenly spread them out, whether it's on 3 or 4, that you will finish with a pair of 2 stitches. What you'll want to do, the easiest way I find, is slide that stitch. So the important step of this repeat of sliding that stitch back to the left needle to be reworked. So I just slide it onto my empty double pointed needle, spin around, and I use that empty needle to kind of help me pass it along. So I'm going to pass it again from my empty needle back to a needle full of stitches so I can carry on doing that repeat. This will also be the case if you are doing magic loop. When you finish that first half, just make sure that you are passing this stitch back so it can be worked again. So you'll need to move it to the second half of your stitches. So once I've finished working that 2-stitch repeat of knitting the second stitch through the back loop, first stitch, knit, and passing a stitch back to kind of repeat around, I have something like this. Now, if we look at it, here's the end of my round, and here's the beginning of my round. We'd get a really weird jog if I just went, oh, I'm done with my braid, I'm gonna carry on. As you'll notice, the start of it, you'll see the stitch is kind of going like so, slanting over to start this horizontal shaping. And at the end of my round, I have that stitch going horizontal, and if I started knitting, it would slant kind of upwards. So to give us a slightly more even join of our braid, we're going to actually increase by 1 stitch. And what we're going to do is increase it by picking it up where our first horizontal stitch is. So that's the first one that's going parallel to the rest of our knitting. So I'm just going to stick my needle in so you can see that is my first horizontal stitch. So what I'm going to do is take a needle and I'm going to pierce straight through the middle of that horizontal stitch. You can also do this with a crochet hook as well. I'm going to wrap yarn around it and pull a stitch through. So it's going directly through the center of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick that stitch on the needle. So if you're working double points like me, you want to basically stick that stitch next to what was the last stitch of your round. So that was the last stitch of the round. This stitch here, which I have not tensioned, which I will do now, is the stitch I just picked up or made by pulling yarn through the middle of that first horizontal stitch, like so. Now what I'm going to do, kind of like a bind off, I'm going to take my left needle, I'm going to grab what is now the second stitch on my right needle, so what was the last stitch of the round, and I'm simply going to pass it over top, like so. So kind of like a bind off. Now, that should give you a smoother join. Nothing in life is absolutely perfect, but what it will do is bring those horizontal stitches more in line. So when you start carrying on with your stockinette or whatever stitch pattern it is, you shouldn't get kind of some wavy lines happening.